I'm Brian Lichtenberger, CEO, founder of Marker. We're going to talk about data today. We're going to talk a lot about it. We're going to talk about how clients are using it, why they're using it. We're going to talk about some best practices, some things to avoid. We're going to go through some specific use cases we're seeing with clients in the market. First, a little bit about Marker. We are a 2-year-old company. We have great clients. We've seen a lot of growth in the last 2 years. Our clients are large owners, operators of single-family and multifamily, predominantly in residential. We do have clients that use us in some other asset classes, but really great client base. We announced last week our $6 million Series B, which was led by RET Ventures, our lead VC, which included participation from Pretium, who through their Progress subsidiary, one of the largest owners of single-family homes for rent in the country. Our data is increasingly being used by journalists to inform their stories. You can see we're being sourced by a number of folks here that, and that's increasingly a really important part of what we're doing. A little bit more about our team and about me. I'm a 2-time founder and CEO. I've spent the bulk of my career at the intersection of data, analytics, and industry-specific business decisions. The working thesis of my career is effectively that data is transforming every industry, fundamentally how companies compete, how they operate, how they make decisions. It's really just happening in different industries a little bit later than others. But it's happening. The rest of our team at Marker is a really interesting blend of data analytics expertise as well as domain expertise in real estate proper. Our investors, you can see, again, RET, our lead VC. We have 3 other large owners, operators that are strategically invested in the company, which is really helpful when we think about building our products. When you think about why data and why now, our view is that the pace of change we've seen in real estate has accelerated. There's lots of reasons why that's the case. Obviously, COVID was a big driver in this, but we believe that pace of change is unlikely to decelerate. And I think what a lot of clients have identified is to keep up with an increasing pace of change in the industry, they need to essentially change the way that they make decisions. It needs to be faster. They need to do things that are different than their competitors, and that's driving many of our clients and others to want to pursue different types of data initiatives. When you think about how that's impacting the industry, we're moving from a state where research was predominantly centralized through whether it's the brokers or some of the large research and data companies, and that was disseminated more of a hub and spoke model. So data would be aggregated by one of those major players. Analysts would take that and they would write reports and then that would get disseminated out. The workflow was largely centric around people and reports and more of a reactive type of a decision-making process. And what you're seeing, at least what we're seeing, is effectively an unbundling of that workflow, where data is now more predominantly being centralized actually at the client, whether that's in their own data warehouse or through more of an amalgamation of data vendors. Research is more proprietary than it has historically been, and you're seeing a workflow that is much different than the one that has previously been employed. The role of surveys remains important, but increasingly clients have identified the need to look at their first-party data alongside third-party data, as well as understanding that survey data. Our go-forward view of what the industry will look like is more of a one in which clients are consuming data, they're building proprietary forecasts, they still have that analyst overlay, and we think about people as being data-powered. I think one idea with data is that, it's going to replace the people. We actually don't think that's true. The products that we create and the solutions that we deliver are meant to enable people to do their jobs better, more efficiently, and with greater conviction. Why now with respect to data? We obviously talked about the pandemic as being an accelerator, but you think about the actual inputs, some of the traditional inputs, I'll show you a slide in a minute that shows how some of those inputs have deteriorated. The availability of new data sets that exist is relatively new. And then the competition piece. So we hear from clients all the time, I used to be one of 2 or 3 bidders on a deal. Now I'm one of 15. Now I'm one of 20. And so in an environment where competition has increased, how can you be successful if you're doing the same thing as everyone else with the same data that everybody else has? And there's a big driver of adoption of various data initiatives. We talked about the value of historical inputs. These are surveys that the government does, whether it's the census, BLS reports, or other government surveys, have been really important inputs, not just for clients, but also for many of the large data vendors. If you are using demographic data from one of the large real estate information companies, you are using data from one of these reports. There is a secular decline in response rate to these government surveys. Obviously, COVID was an accelerator of that, but this was happening pre-COVID. The impact of this is a lot of volatility in terms of the usefulness of these data sets. And again, these continue to be really predominant inputs for a lot of folks in the industry. Why does that matter? It matters because it negatively impacts your returns. We did a study at Marker where we leveraged our rent forecast. I'll talk about the forecast in a little bit, where we identified the top, if you bought in the top 5, 10, 20 markets and you avoided the bottom 20, how would that impact your returns? And you can see really significant impact, not just in percentage terms, but in real dollar terms to your ability to generate returns. This is no different than thinking about the other side, which is if you're making decisions with bad information, that's a drag on your return profile going forward. So it really matters. I use terms like data initiative, data journey, and that can mean things big and small. That can mean building out a data warehouse. That can mean something as simple as just licensing data from a new vendor. Ultimately, when you think about what are some of the best practices and what are some of the opportunities to invest, this is a survey that I track every year. Harvard Business does it with this company called New Vantage. They've been doing it for 12 or 15 years. They survey technology leaders at Fortune 100 companies. And they ask them, what are you investing in? They ask them about all these different questions. And it's really insightful in terms of understanding where folks are investing, what the opportunities are, what some of the challenges are. And you can see nearly 100% of those companies are investing in data and AI. And those that are seeing significant returns. The biggest challenges to success are actually people and culture, and the need to reorient and reorganize existing teams and existing processes are a drag on success. But those that are investing, despite those obstacles, are significantly benefiting. They're seeing increased innovation, increased competitiveness, increased profitability. Some best practices to employ. We see this all the time where these initiatives have to be prioritized at a senior level. If they are not, they're not going to be successful. We see too often, we'll hear from clients, hey, we just, Ted just became the data person in our company now. And Ted is not a C-level person. He's buried somewhere in the tech organization. Ted's not empowered to do the job he needs to do. The initiative's not prioritized. With anything else, setting plans, tying the results to how folks are evaluated and compensated is critical. And then lastly, setting outcomes, setting realistic outcomes. We see too often we're investing in data and AI, and they expect, folks expect it's going to fundamentally change your business. It can have a significant impact. It does take time. It's going to differ across functions. I want to talk about a few specific data initiatives we see employed by folks in real estate today. We'll give you some case studies in terms of how those are benefiting those companies. We're going to dig into each of these momentarily. First, centralizing internal data. So if you own properties, you are a data company. Those properties are generating rent every month. If you took that, looked at it longitudinally, you've created a data set that can derive insight. Your financial, your operational data, all of that information can deliver insights to your teams. So there's a big trend we see from clients that want to centralize that, to look at that longitudinally. Some clients, will do that specifically for their asset management teams. Some clients want to do that broader by building out their own data warehouse and bring in not just their own data, but other third-party data, like data that's derived from folks like Marker. New sources of external data. So we talked about, the gap that exists around, just one example, demographic data or income data or employment data. So what you're seeing is a number of clients that want to license other insight and data that could exist in the market to help round out their view of what's happening with properties or markets. All the way in the right here, innovation at the modeling or forecasting layer. Big trend from clients that want to build their own forecasts, develop a proprietary view of what's happening with rent at a submarket level, even just simply at an MSA level. Again, to do something different than their competitive set. A few case studies here that Marker helps clients with. Marker's platform ingests at scale massive data sets. We do all the work to cleanse them, to structure them, to connect them. So we'll bring in clients' first-party data, their rent rolls, their financial data, their operational data. We'll connect that to third-party data, could be Marker data or other vendor data. We bring in all the government sources also, and enable clients to have access either through a data feed or through dashboards to more of a unified view of all the critical inputs that they care about. One real example, multi-billion-dollar owner. They own over 100,000 units. They share with us their addresses of their existing portfolio, as well as new addresses that they're looking at to potentially buy. We resolve those addresses. We leverage our Marker ID, which is our proprietary identifier, to connect those addresses to Marker analytics. And then we deliver to them essentially a cleansed feed that's very easy to consume, that this particular client puts into their data warehouse. It fits perfectly within their existing workflow. We're just rounding out their insight and doing it in a really seamless way. This is a big version. There's much smaller versions of being able to do this as well. New sources of external data. So, Marker, we've developed a very significant data network covering all the major food groups, demand indicators, supply indicators. We have a lot of data about properties. We also have a lot of rent data. And again, most of this today is pointed at residential, but we do have a lot of applications in industrial, in retail, as well as in office and other asset classes. What are some examples of how clients get access to this data and why? Our income and employment data is considered by a lot of folks in the industry to be a must-have product. And we talked about some of those gaps that exist with the census. By the way, I feel like I'm really digging the census. We use the census ourselves. We use it in combination with these other data sets. Again, rounding out that view, complementing it, giving us the best possible view. We aggregate real-time payroll and demographic data covering almost 20 million consumers in the US, over 2 million employers. We have incredibly rich data. We can go all the way down to the block group to deliver this insight. It's updated every month. But understanding affordability, rent to income, understanding lots of different splits around, again, income, demographic data. If you have a strategy targeting super high income people in a specific submarket, we can give you great insight to understand that. All this income data has very strong correlation to rental rate growth. A lot of really rich analytics to be created leveraging this. Our population nowcast is a data set that is very powerful. We nowcast the census, so the census is updated infrequently. We update this every month. Our data set covers 130 million households. We see 30 million moves per year. So essentially like nearly 100% of folks that are moving in the country, we're seeing that. Understanding the impact of net migration in and out, not just at an MSA or a state, but also down to a submarket, is a critical use case. So a very powerful data set. You can see it's got a high degree of correlation to historical census reports around population growth. And again, it covers effectively the entire country. Lastly, I want to talk about the way that we help clients innovate with forecasts. The industry standard when delivering a rent forecast, there's, whether you're working with Axiometrics or CoStar or one of those other vendors, is to use survey data and essentially build a linear model on top of that survey data with the expectation that historical trend will continue into the future. There's nothing inherently wrong with that approach. There's nothing really inherently wrong with survey data. We also use survey data. Our approach, however, is to use machine learning, and we do this for a variety of reasons. First, that enables us to use a variety of data inputs in our models, not just survey data. We use lots of data on supply, permits, new construction. We use lots of data on demand, income, things like even like crime, population counts are also inputs into our model. We use not just survey data, we use listings, we look at transactions, we plug all this into the model. Machine learning enables us to create an ensemble of models, and the machine and the models do a great job of identifying hidden relationships that exist between these data sets and future rent growth. The other benefit is we can now create a multi-year output that is highly accurate, outperforms all of the benchmarks, and enables us to deliver transparency, not just to what the rent growth is going to be, but the underlying drivers that are driving that rent growth to be what it is. How does it outperform? So we've done these tests where we can demonstrate quantitatively a significantly higher degree of accuracy than our competitive set. And that accuracy is improving over time. The other thing we can do here is then provide clients with access to the underlying drivers. So this particular submarket, we're saying rent growth is going to be 4%. Okay, that's great. Why? What's driving that 4% to be what it is? In this particular submarket, you're seeing employment growth, population growth. You're seeing occupancy as being positive drivers of rent growth. You're seeing new supply and home prices being negative drivers of rent growth. The other benefit here is we can backtest and give you and provide clients a very detailed historical correlation of our rent forecast relative to accuracy over time. It's a fundamentally different experience than you're going to get. I would just challenge you, go ask your existing rent forecast provider for their, even just something as simple as, can you give me your methodology for how you create your forecasts? They're not going to be able to do it. If you ask them, what's your historical accuracy in predicting rent, even in this state, they're not going to be able to give that to you. And so, what we believe is that we have all this data at our disposal. Clients have their own data at their disposal. The bar should be raised as it relates to forecasting rent. That's a big part of what we're doing here at Marker. If you're interested in receiving this presentation, send me an email. I'll send you the slide deck. If you're interested in learning more about Marker, send me a note. We will be more than happy, and our team will be around the next couple of days. We have 2 minutes left. Happy to take a couple questions if there are any.